Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and in today's video, I will be running through my team selection ahead of Game Week 22. Welcome back everyone to another video. Now, I just wanted to mention at the start of this video that out of all of the game weeks so far this season, I think this is the one where I feel most conflicted as to what I'm going to do with my team. So if I start rambling at any point, I do apologise, but hopefully it's helpful to you as well, because I think that this week is quite a tricky week to navigate, especially with the upcoming fixture swing. So hopefully it's relatable. Either way, if you did enjoy today's video, I'd massively appreciate it if you could leave a like, hit subscribe if you're new around here, but only of course if you did enjoy today's content. Let's start off with in goal and in my back line. I don't think I'm realistically making a keeper transfer this week. Kelleher away at Chelsea is not ideal, but he's been fantastic for me so far. In fact, probably my hero of the season. Since I picked him up, he's kept a couple of clean sheets, plenty of save points, and crucially, 2 penalty saves in the last 6 game weeks is madness. I don't think I've ever actually had a penalty save from a keeper in all of my years playing FPL, or at least not to my memory anyway. So to have 2 in the last 6 game weeks from one guy is ridiculous good fortune. So thank you, Kelleher. And I think he's earned a little bit more time in my team. The fixtures coming for Brentford are not fantastic, but even in poorer fixtures, keepers can still do relatively well. They obviously could still keep a clean sheet, but they'll still be quite likely to get those save points. And who knows, maybe a 3rd penalty save is on the horizon. Let's move into the back 4. I am going to go with a back 4 this week. Double Arsenal defence. I don't think there's any doubt about starting both of these guys. Gabriel is obviously one of the best value picks in the game. He is getting up there towards 7 million now, but I still think that's good value for money for what he provides. Even in the Carabao Cup, I was looking out for any set pieces and he was almost on the end of a couple. He's just such a fantastic goal threat from those set pieces. He gets DEFCON, he gets the bonus points, and of course he's in a great defence for Arsenal as well. Similar story with Timber, minus the DEFCONs, but he has been a bit unfortunate not to get more attacking returns. I'm ever so slightly concerned that he played 90 minutes in the Carabao Cup, which will be just 2 full days before the following fixture in Game Week 22 away at Nottingham Forest. However, Ben White also started, and I believe also got 90 minutes in that match. So given Ben White's injury doubts over the season, I'd be quite surprised to see him start twice in the space of 3 days, obviously the 2-day gap in the middle. So I think Timber's probably going to be fairly safe for that one. And it's a good enough fixture away at Nottingham Forest. Lewis Hall is the one that I'm probably most concerned about, probably in my entire starting 11 for the percentage chances of a start. Not because I don't think it's likely he starts. I just think out of all of my players, he's the one that I've got my eye on the most. If he does start against Wolves, I'm very happy with it. Wolves have been better recently, of course, but they're still bottom of the league for a reason. And Lewis Hall, just watching him play is a joy. He gets forward so often. His crossing ability is fantastic. He always seems like he's very close to picking up a haul and picking up attacking returns. Newcastle's ability to keep clean sheets is in question, but if they're going to keep one against Wolves, seems like as good a time as any. So hopefully he does start. I'm probably casting too much doubt on that as well. I'm still like 90-95% sure that he does. And the turnaround between their Carabao Cup first leg and the Wolves game is, I think, 4 days. So it's a pretty good gap. I'm just a little bit worried that maybe they rest him ahead of the Champions League in the midweek, which they do need to win against PSV. So Lewis Hall, I think I'm okay. Alderete will be my 4th starting defender. At home to Crystal Palace, decent odds of a clean sheet. Sunderland at home have been pretty good, pretty strong defensively. Palace themselves have not been particularly potent when it comes to their attacking force recently. They are getting players back, of course, but I still back Sunderland to keep it a pretty tight, pretty cagey game. And Alderete is, of course, good on the bonus points. If, for whatever reason, Lewis Hall, I'll come back to this one quickly, doesn't start, both Andersons on my bench are perfectly viable options to come off my bench. Fulham's Anderson away at Leeds is fine. Anderson at home for Nottingham Forest against Arsenal will get DEFCON, you would think. So both of which I'm perfectly happy with if they were to come off my bench, but I think these 4 are the best 4 to be starting. So a few weeks ago, if you had told me my biggest concerns would be in my midfield, I would have probably laughed at you because I've piled a lot of money into that midfield. And just a few weeks back, most of these players looked absolutely fantastic. All of a sudden, I've got doubts over all of them. I'll quickly tick off Szoboszlai. He's not going to be staying in my team for too much longer. He's been a bit disappointing, but Burnley at home is a good fixture. And I'm not sure whether Salah will play in this fixture, so he could still be on penalties. And of course, his set pieces, he might get DEFCON as well if he plays right back. It's fine for this week. Beyond this week, I am going to have a plan to sell him, but I'm not going to discuss him too much in this video, mainly because of the fixture. The other three, I mean, they're all pretty disappointing at the moment. Foden, luckily he got brought off early against Newcastle in the midweek, and the turnaround between those two fixtures is pretty reasonable. So I think he's still fairly secure to start and get good minutes against Man United. It's also a massive game for them, of course, and they can't afford to drop points in the league, with Arsenal obviously running away with it a little bit at the moment. So I think Foden does play, but I'm ever so slightly concerned that that rest is coming. And because they've also got Cherki in there, they've got Semenyo now in the fold, Doku's playing well, they've got options that can play on the wings. And I do just wonder if maybe Cherki comes in centrally, or Bernardo Silva could play there for a little bit. Reinders could also play there. There are options. So I'm not going to do anything with him this week, realistically, because it's Man United away. I still think that he's got a good chance of starting, but I'm just almost adding a note to this video to say that I'm skeptical about a benching coming at some point soon. So Man United away, Wolves at home next 2. After that, I am looking to sell him. If he gets benched against Man United, I might have to bring those plans forward, potentially, but that would be quite inconvenient. Let's move across to Bukayo Saka next. He played 90 minutes in the Carabao Cup, which is casting doubts in my mind as to whether or not Madueke might play against Nottingham Forest in the Premier League, because he's a very capable understudy. And to be fair, I don't think Arsenal would even describe him as an understudy. They would just say he's a squad player, he'll get minutes, and he's perfectly capable of playing against Nottingham Forest and doing a very good job there. With that in mind, I am ever so slightly tempted to just cut my losses with Saka, get rid of him, bring in Declan Rice. That would be the player that I go for. Keep the triple Arsenal. Their odds of having a double game week in game week 26 went up after beating Chelsea in the Carabao Cup semi-final first leg, because now it's more likely that they progress into the final. That would be in game week 31. Their game week 31 fixture would be brought forward to game week 26, or at least that's one of the possibilities. It might go elsewhere, but it's more likely that it gets brought forward to game week 26. If that happens, I did have a gut feeling that I should hold on to Saka, because he makes for a very good captain that week, because it would be, I think, Brentford away, followed by Wolves away in game week 26. And the minutes, in theory, should be pretty good for Saka in that double game week, because one half of the double game week is just your standard game week on the Saturday, Sunday. Then you've got the Wigan game in the FA Cup between the second game, the Wolves game in the double game week. So it's quite likely that Saka would play the first one, get rested against Wigan in the FA Cup 4th round, and then come back in against Wolves. So his minutes for that game week look really good if they get the double. So selling him feels like I might be removing a really good captaincy option from that game week. And obviously, we know he can be explosive. However, from now until then, I think I'm going to be looking at the team sheet quite often and just wondering or doubting, is he definitely going to start against Nottingham Forest just 2 days after playing 90 minutes when you've got Madueke there? Probably, maybe, but I'm not 100% sure. Whereas with Declan Rice, you could take that to the bank. I wouldn't have any doubts over him starting against Nottingham Forest. He got 82 minutes, I think, against Chelsea, but did get brought off a little bit early. And he is more of a minutes monster than Saka is. So I am tempted to make that move. We'll have a look at the different ways that I can spend that money later on in the video, but I'm not ruling it out altogether. The final player we need to talk about is CUNHA, and I'll use this as an opportunity to break up this section and look at the players that I'm potentially looking at replacing him with. Okay, so sorry to recycle a graphic from earlier on in my transfer plans video from this game week, but of course I've done some more thinking about the different players I would look to replace CUNHA with this week if I was to make a move. I've already mentioned in previous videos that I don't think he's a fire sale. I don't think you need to get rid of him ahead of Man City, because I think Man United are perfectly capable of scoring in that fixture, and Cunha could be one who could benefit from that. However, looking at the next two together, even if I don't sell him for this week, Arsenal away next week is also awful, and I'd probably want to bench him. So there's an opportunity here to maybe look at moving him on for a midfielder that I'd want long term. I'm not currently planning on wildcarding in game week 24. That is worth noting, because if I was, I'd have no doubts in removing Cunha, and I'd probably look at Bruno Guimaraes, maybe Anthony Gordon with short-term good fixtures, and really pile into the next 2 game weeks, and then obviously wildcard out of it in game week 24. But because I'm looking at holding off on my wildcard, because I think I can navigate the next patch of the season without needing the wildcard, and maybe bide my time to game week 32 and then really go strong for the back few game weeks of the season, I'm looking at a player that can probably tie me over until game week 31. So I don't think I'm going to go with Bruno G, because he's performing really well. I've no problems with him as a pick. If you've got him already, you're loving it, clearly. But I'm still looking for the next player who's going to pop off, and I just wonder how sustainable it is. Again, nothing against him, but I'm not considering him as one of my favorite replacement options right now. I think the 4 on the right hand side are the ones that I'm really deciding between: Rodgers, Enzo, Wilson, and Tavernier. Wilson and Tavernier are the cheap options. I am pretty tempted to just go with Wilson, even if it feels like points chasing, because I actually really quite like the fixtures all the way through to game week 31. They've got a really lovely fixture in game week 31 when some teams will be blanking. So if I'm dead ending in 31, having him would be helpful. The same goes for Rodgers. He's more expensive. The data's not quite as good, but he's just such a good player, and he is overperforming his data pretty consistently now for the past season and a half. And he's just got that elite energy about him. It feels like such a terrible thing to say on a video that usually I try to be informative, have objective information. And he's got a lot of those factors as well. He's got a lot of objective benefits to owning him. But it's the subjective stuff with Rodgers that I just can't get away from. I just think he's such a good player that he is quite likely to overperform his data. And I know that's unscientific, and I know it doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. But outside of that Newcastle game, I love his fixtures between now and game week 31. His ownership's quite high as well, so maybe there's a little bit of a defensive mentality in owning him. But I think there are points to be chased here with Rodgers. I really think that he could continue to do really well. Wilson, I'm the same on, but maybe ever so slightly less confident on the minutes moving forwards. There's a little bit of a doubt as to his contract situation. I wouldn't let that put me off too much, but it is there. Tavernier and Enzo, I think the best fixtures are yet to come, and I don't know if now is the time I want to be buying. I think I'm more likely to want them in game week 24. I want a little bit more information on Chelsea, how potent they look in the new system as well. And although his data is fantastic, that might change. So I'm willing to use the next 2 fixtures to wait and see. And also there is a chance that Chelsea rotate a little bit. We've already heard that they're looking at the medical department much more and leaning on them much more than in previous seasons. So I am a little bit worried about minutes being managed for both him and Palmer. Tavernier is, again, a very good cheap pick. He's on penalties, set pieces, 90 minutes, a bit of DEFCON there as well. Not a lot, but a bit, and a bit of open play threat. So he ticks all of the boxes for what makes a good cheap FPL pick. I do feel like I want a little bit more information on Bournemouth and how they set up without Semenyo, without Cliver, who's out for quite a while. And I think the next 2 weeks are perfectly fine to just wait and see, and then maybe look at jumping on him in game week 24. Okay, so before we move on to the forward section, I just want to look at the different routes to my midfielder transfers over the next few game weeks, because it's not just this week in isolation that I need to worry about. It's also the fixture swing in game week 24, and then all of the fixtures through to game week 31 if I'm looking at postponing the wildcard until that point, because I need players that will allow other moves in the future, but also players that I can hold on to for that period of time. So this is my current 11 right now. I think I'm pretty likely to make a move on Cunha. I'm not fully there. I could roll the transfer, but I think that there is an opportunity to move on to one of the players I've discussed. I think if I'm being totally honest, the most likely player I go with right now, and it is a little bit vibey, it's Rodgers over Wilson right now. Now, Wilson is also in contention, and as are Enzo and Tavernier, by the way. But as discussed, I think I prefer to wait until game week 24 on those two. Now, Rodgers fits snugly in my team, 0.3 million in the bank, and I would have 2 free transfers to use from next week onwards. If I only used 1 free transfer this week, by the way, because there is an outside chance that maybe I just cut my losses on Saka, take him down to Declan Rice, and then I've got loads of money in the bank for future moves. Let's imagine right now that I just make this one move, though. I think it's very unlikely that I make any move in game week 24 if I had this team. Rodgers away at Newcastle is not great, but outside of that, I can set up. I've got good bench cover. I think I can survive that game week and then have 3 free transfers for game week 24, which is, I think, a moving week, a week where I do want to have a few free transfers and make a few different moves to benefit my team for the next period of fixtures. I think by this point, it's pretty likely that I sell Foden. It's not for sure, but I think it's quite likely. And Bruno Fernandes is almost a must buy at that point, in my personal opinion, but I'm penciling that transfer in. Bruno Fernandes will be a buy in game week 24 for me. So with that in mind, I've got 2 free transfers left to use. I'm minus 0.4. That will probably be even less by the time we get closer to this deadline. But I've still got Szoboszlai and Ekitike as kind of cash cows if I wanted to use them that way. Against Newcastle, their fixtures have really run out by this point. I'm not that interested in Szoboszlai. Ekitike could stay, but he's a lot of money, so I could downgrade him. Now, one route to be able to afford Bruno would be Ekitike down to Thiago. That's easy enough to do. But Thiago's fixtures at this point are not favourable for the next couple of game weeks. I think, yeah, game week 27 onwards, I will want him. But Aston Villa away, Newcastle away, Arsenal at home is probably not the ideal time to be jumping on. So with that in mind, Szoboszlai probably needs to be the guy. Now, if I went with Rodgers, then I, unfortunately, by the time we get here, can't get to Enzo with just the 2 free transfers. So I still need to find 0.2 to make that move. And by 24, I think it's quite likely I want a Chelsea player. Enzo seems like the likely candidate right now. If I was to forego Chelsea altogether, I could just buy Wilson, or I could buy Tavernier. Nice and snug, easy. I've got money in the bank. I've only used 2 of my 3 free transfers. It gives me quite a bit of wiggle room moving forwards. But I do think that I want Enzo Fernandez or at least a Chelsea player. The other thing to mention here is if I do go with Rodgers, unless I sell Saka in game week 24, I'm not getting Palmer. It's going to be very, very difficult to do so unless I really downgrade Ekitike all the way to like Mane or something. Even then, it's going to be pretty tight on Palmer. It's not going to be easy to get to him. It's possible right now, but 0.2 wiggle room, I'd need to be quick on my transfers over the next couple of game weeks to make sure that I've got the money for that. And I just don't know whether Palmer's minutes are going to be there, honestly. So I think I'm willing to almost not lock myself out of Palmer because Saka always gives me a route to get to him if I want to. But I think mentally, if I do accept that I'm probably going to go with Enzo more likely than not, then I quite like this midfield 4. Mane could be, I mean, it can't quite be Ekitike, of course. I'd have to downgrade him. But I think right now, is it Roger? I can't quite get Watkins, sorry. That is quite annoying. Mateta could be an option by this point. It would give me plenty of money in the bank. Crystal Palace have some great fixtures coming at this point, so he's an option. I could also potentially look at Bowen. I'm not loving it, but if Paqueta moves to Brazil, then Bowen could be on penalties. I doubt that will be popular right now, but it's an option. Or I could, again, just say, you know what? I don't care about the fixtures. Thiago, I want long term, and I can just buy him. And you know what? I can probably get on board with that as well. So all of that to say, I am mapping ahead to try and figure out how I'm going to use the money elsewhere later on. I think the big one for me is Bruno Fernandes. As long as I can get to him pretty easily in game week 24, I'm happy. Rodgers, I think, is the most likely. If I went back to, let's load up, I think we're here anyway. So again, sorry for rambling. If we went back to my original team in game week 22 here, and instead of CUNHA, I went with Wilson over Rodgers, I am a little bit more flexible. I've got more money in the bank, 2.1 million. I fast forward again to game week 24. I can be a little bit more adventurous. I've got 8.7 million to replace Szoboszlai, so Enzo's no problem whatsoever. I can get him very easily. Again, Foden becomes Bruno Fernandes with ease. And I've still got 1.6 million to make an upgrade elsewhere. Now, that could be Elliot Anderson up to, well, 6.9 million, but that could be Tavernier, for instance. Or it could be a defender like Lewis Hall, whose fixtures have run out at this point, to Cucurella, if he looks good. Could be Reece James. I think most likely it would be Chalobah. And again, I've got plenty of wiggle room there. And that gives me double Chelsea, technically triple with GU, but we're not playing him. But that gives me double Chelsea for a great fixture run and a bit of wiggle room for future moves as well. Because by the time we get to Game Week 26, I'm going to want Crystal Palace defenders because they've got fantastic fixtures in Game Week 26 and 27. So Wilson is the more flexible pick. But as you can tell, I feel like there's still enough going for the Rodgers pick that I think I'd prefer him. Anyway, so let's revert back. Of course, I could also look at just getting rid of Saka. So Cunha down to Rodgers, Saka down to Rice, for instance. I've already explained pros and cons on that. If we move forward to Game Week 24, I've already got 3 million in the bank. So I can probably save transfers here. I can just do Foden to Bruno. I've got 2.3 million to upgrade even Elliot Anderson if I wanted to. But again, it'd probably be Szoboszlai to Enzo. And again, I've just got loads of wiggle room at this point. So 2.5 million, that again, upgrade Lewis Hall to Chalobah, Cucurella, whoever I want, and I'll still have tons of money in the bank. So yeah, I mean, those are the moves I'm making. Let's go back to my team and see what I'm actually thinking of doing this week. Apologies for the very long-winded last section. I did get a bit rambly there. Hopefully I'll keep this last section a bit shorter. I've put in Rodgers into my starting 11 in place of Cunha for now. As you can tell from the last section, that's probably the one that I'm feeling the most right now. But of course, as I mentioned, Wilson is still very much in my consideration set as that Cunha replacement. I think right now, on balance of percentages, I think Rodgers, I'm about 60% there, 20% on Wilson, 20% on rolling. Actually, maybe even 30% Wilson, 10% rolling. I think rolling I'm relatively unlikely to do now because I am worried a little bit that Game Week 23, if I don't sell Cunha now, a lot of these players are going to be the same players that I'm considering next week. So I might as well just bring it forward and take the better fixture for either Rodgers or Wilson now, rather than wait a week and potentially lose out on more points, then make the transfer anyway. So I think Rodgers is the most likely one to come in to my midfield. That gives me a bit of a stronger midfield. Saka is still a little bit of a worry for me. But right now, I think I'm probably just about holding on to him for another game week, but that could be painful. I think having a decent bit of bench cover, both Andersons are decent enough this week, helps a bit. But either way, I think it's very unlikely that Saka doesn't get any minutes against Nottingham Forest, so I doubt that will matter. Moving into my forward line quickly before we wrap up. Haaland and Ekitike, very happy to own both of them. I think if I was to pick a free hit this week, those would be the two on my free hit. Maybe there's a conversation about captaincy here to be had. Ekitike's minutes look like they'll be pretty good against Burnley at home, and it's, of course, a very good fixture. But he doesn't have penalties. He has just recovered from an injury. I don't think that I've got enough of a reason to go against Haaland this week. Pep Guardiola did mention that Haaland is knackered in the most recent, after the most recent match in the Carabao Cup semi-final. But if he's really that knackered, why are you playing him against Exeter? So I do just wonder if that's maybe throwing a little bit of a curveball into the mix where we can probably ignore that one for now. Does it mean that Haaland's minutes are going to be managed a little bit over the next few weeks? Possibly. But it would take a very, very brave person to be taking him out at this point on the off chance that he doesn't play against Man United or gets brought off early in this game. I just don't really see it as a highly likely scenario. It could happen, and if it does, then we're going to have to reevaluate Haaland's minutes moving forwards. But until it actually happens, I'm just going to continue acting like nothing's wrong with Haaland. Man United away is a good fixture. They've been a little bit better defensively recently, but I still see Man City scoring a few here. And although Haaland's not been at his very top level recently, he's still my captain in my books. So very happy with the forward line. Relieved that Ekitike is fit for this one. He's got a lot of making up to do, considering I sold Thiago for him a few weeks ago. I doubt he's going to make up all of those goals this week, but if he can get a couple of returns, I'd be perfectly happy with that. He'll be my vice captain. I'm pretty happy with my 11 overall, especially if I do make that CUNHA to Rodgers, maybe Wilson move. Saka, I'll do a little bit more digging on. And if you're an Arsenal fan, please let me know what you think is going to happen this weekend with Saka and Rice. Is Saka very likely to start? Probably. He had a rest in the FA Cup, I suppose. So, yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm on the fence with that one. But I think most likely I'll use 1 free transfer, then have 3 to use in Game Week 24. Let me know if you've got any questions ahead of the deadline. I'm happy to answer them in the comments below. Leave a like if you've enjoyed the video. If you're new around here, hit subscribe as well. Good luck in Game Week 22, everyone.